November 8, 1942. Outside Oran, Algeria, Operation Torch. The sand is wet with seawater and cordite. Private First Class Raymond Dugan lies flat behind the steel flank of a U.S. M3 half-track as German machine gun fire rips across the beachhead. The sound is constant, a metallic tearing like canvas being shredded by the sky itself. He hasn't eaten since before dawn. His stomach twists. Not hunger anymore. Something sharper. Hollow. Ammo, someone shouts. A shell lands short. Sand explodes over his helmet. The air tastes like salt and burning oil. Dugan fumbles into his pack with shaking fingers and pulls out a small brown-wrapped bar stamped U.S. Army Field Ration D chocolate. For a split second, something human flickers in him, a memory of Pennsylvania winters, of candy counters and paper-wrapped sweets. He tears the wrapper open with his teeth. The bar smells faint, bitter, industrial. He bites down hard. Pain shoots through his jaw. The bar does not yield. "What the hell is this?" he mutters. Another burst of machine gun fire drives his head lower. Sand sprays across the exposed chocolate. He bites again. Nothing. It feels less like candy and more like a block of pressed earth. "Use your knife!" Corporal Jenkins shouts beside him, firing in controlled bursts from his M1 Garand. Dugan pulls his trench knife free and scrapes at the surface. The blade shaves off brittle flakes that fall into his palm like wood shavings. He tips them into his mouth. The taste is flat, grainy, slightly sweet, but overwhelmed by a chalky density that coats his tongue and refuses to dissolve. It is unmistakably chocolate, but it does not want to be eaten. He forces himself to chew. Slowly, reluctantly, his stomach quiets. It is not pleasure. It is fuel. And somewhere, thousands of miles away, that was exactly the point. April 14th, 1942, Washington, D.C., Subsistence Research Laboratory. Captain Paul P. Logan stands over a stainless steel table scattered with cocoa powder and oat flour. A ceiling fan hums above the laboratory as the war production machinery of America roars beyond its walls. 4 months earlier, Japanese aircraft tore into Pearl Harbor. Now millions of American men will soon be scattered across oceans, North Africa, the Pacific Islands, the frozen Aleutians. They will need food that survives where kitchens cannot. The War Department's request had been clear. The ration must weigh exactly 4 ounces, deliver roughly 600 calories, withstand tropical heat without melting, remain edible for years, and most unusually, it must taste slightly better than a boiled potato. Not delicious, not comforting, just barely tolerable. Logan picks up a prototype bar, dark brown, matte, dense. He breaks off a square and places it in his mouth. He chews. The mixture resists his teeth like compressed clay. A civilian chemist across the table watches nervously. "Too hard, Captain," Logan swallows with effort. "If it tastes good," he says evenly, "they'll eat it too soon." That is the real enemy. Not Germany, not Japan. Temptation. Young soldiers hungry and far from home will devour anything sweet the moment they receive it. But the D-Ration is not designed for comfort in a foxhole during routine supply. It is designed for catastrophe, for when a patrol is cut off behind enemy lines, for when a landing craft misses its rendezvous, for when supply trucks burn on a desert road and a man must march another 48 hours without resupply. The formula changes again. Less sugar, more oat flour, more cocoa fat to resist melting. The final product contains chocolate liquor, sugar, skim milk powder, oat flour, and artificial flavoring, dense enough to stop a careless tooth, stable enough to survive the Sahara. Logan presses the mixture into steel molds. He does not smile. He knows what he is making. Not candy. Insurance. Summer 1942. Hershey, Pennsylvania. The factory floor clatters as conveyor belts carry thousands of rectangular bars toward wrapping stations. Women in white uniforms fold waxed paper with mechanical precision. The air smells faintly of cocoa, but not the rich, sweet aroma tourists once associated with the brand. This chocolate is darker, heavier, more severe. An inspector breaks a flawed batch and samples it. He chews once and frowns. "Tastes like someone forgot the sugar," a supervisor shrugs. "That's the Army's order." By year's end, more than 90 million D-rations will ship overseas. Crates stamped with U.S. quartermaster insignia travel by convoy across submarine-infested Atlantic waters. To Tunisia, to Guadalcanal, to places where refrigeration is fantasy and supply lines stretch thinner by the day. Back outside Oran, Dugan scrapes another sliver into his mouth. A mortar detonates 50 yards away. The beachhead is chaos. Smoke columns, shouted orders, the grinding tracks of armor pushing inland. He looks down at the stubborn square in his hand. "This ain't chocolate," Jenkins mutters between shots. "This is a brick." Dugan nods. Later, men will give it nicknames. Logan's brick, Hitler's secret weapon, chocolate that bites back. But in this moment, beneath artillery fire and North African sun, it is something else. It is the difference between shaking hands and steady aim, between currents. The D wraps then comfort you. It does not reward you. It does not care if you enjoy it. It exists for the hour when everything else has failed. And as American forces push inland from the beaches of Algeria, chewing through resistance yard by yard, thousands of men discover the same bitter truth. This is the only chocolate in the world designed to be hated and carried anyway. February 19th, 1943, Kasserine Pass, Tunisia. The sky is the color of dirty steel. Snow mixes with sand in the wind, stinging exposed skin as German artillery walks methodically across American positions. Trucks burn in the valley below. The narrow mountain roads, the only arteries feeding the US-2 Corps, are choked with wreckage. Private First Class Raymond Dugan has not eaten a full meal in nearly 30 hours. Supply columns meant to reach their sector were scattered during Rommel's counteroffensive. Field kitchens never arrived. Coffee is gone. Bread is gone. The body begins to fail quietly. First the tremor in the hands, then the dull ache behind the eyes, then the slow, creeping weakness in the knees. Dugan feels it now. He raises his M1 rifle toward movement on the ridgeline, and his sight wavers. Not from fear, from lack of fuel. "Steady," Corporal Jenkins mutters beside him. Another German shell detonates, showering them with rock fragments. Dugan drops behind cover and reaches into his pack. There is only one thing left. The brown wrapper is stiff from cold. Field ration D. For a moment he hesitates. He hates it. They all do. Men joke that it could stop a bullet, that it was designed by dentists to drum up business after the war. But this is no joke now. He slams the bar against a rock. Once, twice. It cracks down the center with a sharp report, like breaking tile. He hands half to Jenkins. Neither speaks. They chew slowly, painfully. The chocolate is harder in the mountain cold, fat crystallized, sugar compressed into stubborn density. It sticks to molars. It refuses to dissolve. It does not taste like comfort. It tastes like necessity. Minutes pass. Something changes. The dizziness retreats. The tremor in Dugan's trigger finger steadies. His thoughts sharpen. Calories flood the bloodstream, dense, immediate, brutally efficient. Below them, German infantry begins advancing through the pass. Dugan rises, shoulders his rifle again, and this time the front sight is clear. He fires. In war, comfort is a luxury. Calories are survival. 3 miles away, another American unit is not as fortunate. Cut off overnight by armored thrusts, a platoon from the 1st Infantry Division has been pinned behind a shallow ridge for nearly 2 days. Their K rations were eaten early during a forced march. Ammunition is rationed. Water is shared capful by capful. But several men still have D-Rations in their packs. They had saved them because they disliked them. A lieutenant gathers his exhausted men. "Break them out," he orders. Bars are divided with bayonets. Shavings pass from glove to glove. The taste draws grimaces. One private nearly spits his out until the lieutenant grips his collar. "Swallow it." He does. Within the hour they are moving again. Not fast, not strong, but moving. The difference between collapse and endurance is often measured in ounces. 4 ounces in this case. Back in Washington months earlier, Captain Paul P. Logan had anticipated this moment. He studies reports now arriving from Tunisia, accounts of men surviving prolonged contact after supply interruption. Complaints are still attached, unpalatable. Breaks teeth, hard as brick. Logan reads them without offense, because buried between the grievances are quiet confirmations, kept men functional, provided necessary energy, did not melt. The War Department debates softening the formula slightly. Morale officers argue that soldiers deserve something better tasting, but Logan resists dramatic change. He remembers the directive clearly. An emergency ration must survive 3 enemies: heat, time, and temptation. If it tastes good, it disappears too soon. If it disappears too soon, it fails. Across the Atlantic and Pacific, the D-Ration is proving something uncomfortable. The very thing soldiers hate about it is what makes it effective. August 1943. Guadalcanal. Humidity presses like a wet blanket over the jungle. Regular chocolate liquefies in minutes, turning to brown paste inside wrappers. But the D-Ration holds its form. Sergeant William Harper unwraps one and holds it up to the oppressive sun. Solid, unmelted, unyielding. He shaves it into a canteen cup, mixes it with heated water, and forces down the bitter mixture. Around him, Marines sit gaunt and hollow-eyed. Supply drops have been delayed again by weather and enemy fire. Harper swallows the last of the gritty sludge and exhales slowly. "It's awful," he mutters, then adds, almost grudgingly, "but it works." By late 1943, more than 100 million D-rations have been produced. Hershey's earns the Army-Navy E Award for Excellence in Wartime Manufacturing. Train cars loaded with what soldiers now call combat concrete depart Pennsylvania daily. It will never be beloved. It will never inspire songs. But somewhere in a frozen mountain pass, and somewhere in a jungle clearing, and somewhere in a landing craft drifting off course, men are still alive because they carried something they disliked enough to save. The D-Ration was not designed to boost morale. It was designed to prevent collapse. And in 1943, that difference meant everything. June 6, 1944. Omaha Beach, Normandy. The ramp slams down. Machine gun fire rips through the gray morning before the first boots hit the surf. German MG-42s hammer from the bluffs, the sound so fast it becomes a continuous metallic scream. Private First Class Raymond Dugan steps forward and vanishes waist-deep into freezing channel water. The weight of his pack drags him sideways. Men fall before they even find footing. Someone screams for a medic. Someone else doesn't get the chance. Dugan stumbles through the surf, lungs burning from shock. By the time he collapses behind the shingle bank, his hands are shaking uncontrollably, from cold, from adrenaline, from exhaustion. He hasn't eaten since the night before. There had been no time. Pinned beneath overlapping fields of fire, he tries to raise his M1 rifle toward a muzzle flash on the bluff. The front sight dances. Not fear, fuel. His forearms tremble so violently he lowers the rifle again. Around him, engineers struggle with Bangalore torpedoes. A lieutenant attempts to rally men who are too stunned to move. The tide carries bodies past the landing craft. Minutes stretch into paralysis. Dugan reaches into his pack with stiff fingers. The wrapper is soaked but intact. Field ration D. For one irrational second, he almost laughs at the absurdity. Chocolate on Omaha Beach. He cracks it against the seawall stone. It splits unevenly. He forces a chunk into his mouth and bites down. His jaw aches instantly. It is harder than ever in the cold morning air. The taste is familiar, dry, bitter, reluctant. He chews anyway. Beside him, a replacement soldier barely out of high school stares blankly at the sand, his breathing shallow, his hands empty. "I can't," the kid whispers. "I can't feel my hands." Dugan presses half the bar into his palm. "Eat." The boy hesitates, grimacing at the first bite. "It tastes like dirt." "Swallow it," Dugan says. "You need it more than you need it to taste good." Seconds tick by. Naval shells scream overhead, slamming into German emplacements. The ground trembles. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, Dugan feels the fog lifting. The violent tremor in his trigger finger fades. His breathing steadies. His thoughts sharpen from chaos into clarity. Calories flood the bloodstream like reinforcement troops. He raises his rifle again. This time the front sight holds steady. He fires and moves. Up the sand, into the smoke, up the bluffs. The chocolate does not inspire courage. It makes courage possible. July 1944. Normandy hedgerows. The fighting has turned claustrophobic. Thick earthen banks and tangled roots form natural fortresses. Supply trucks crawl through narrow lanes under constant threat of ambush. One platoon from the 29th Infantry Division becomes temporarily isolated when a bridge behind them collapses under artillery fire. Radio contact fades to static. 36 hours pass, then 48. K-rations are gone. Canteens run low. The first man collapses quietly during a security rotation, his legs simply refusing to hold him upright. "Get him up," the sergeant orders. They do, but his eyes are unfocused. "Check your packs," the sergeant says. "Emergency bars." Now. Reluctant hands reach in. They had carried them for months, from England to the Channel to the beaches, never touching them because they disliked them too much to waste them casually. Now they break them with entrenching tools. Shards are divided evenly. One private gags at the first mouthful. The sergeant grips his chin. "Chew." He does. An hour later, they are still exhausted, still hungry, but upright, still able to move when German infantry probes their perimeter at dawn. The difference is not dramatic. It is not cinematic. It is incremental, measured in ounces, measured in heartbeats that do not slow, measured in 4 dense, stubborn ounces of chocolate designed to be despised. By late 1944, men across Europe and the Pacific share the same grudging realization. The D-Ration does not comfort you. It does not lift morale. It does not remind you of home. It prevents your body from shutting down. Back in Pennsylvania, Hershey's continues producing millions of bars. They earn awards for efficiency and excellence. But the true measure of success is quieter. It is found in a rifle that does not shake, in a soldier who does not collapse, in a platoon that can still stand at dawn. Bullets kill quickly. Hunger kills quietly. And in the spaces between firefights, in the hours when supply lines fail and kitchens fall silent, the most dangerous enemy often wears no uniform at all. The D-Ration was never meant to be loved. It was meant to outlast hunger. And in war, outlasting hunger can mean outlasting everything. December 16, 1944. Ardennes Forest, Belgium, the Battle of the Bulge. The first shells land before dawn. Snow erupts in white fountains as German artillery smashes into thin American lines. Pine branches snap and rain down. Radios crackle with half-formed reports, armored columns, breakthrough, surprise. Private First Class Raymond Dugan jerks awake in a shallow foxhole, breath crystallizing in the air. The cold is vicious, 10 degrees below freezing. His boots are stiff. His canteen is half ice. They were supposed to rotate off the line today. Instead, the Germans came. Machine gun fire rattles through the trees. A flare rises, bathing the forest in ghostly green. Positions, the sergeant shouts. Dugan tries to stand and nearly collapses, not from fear, from depletion. They had been on reduced rations for 2 days already. Supply trucks were diverted east, roads clogged, fuel prioritized for armor. His legs feel hollow. He braces himself against the frozen earth and reaches into his pack. The wrapper is brittle as paper in the cold. Field ration D. He hasn't touched this one in months. He turns it over in his hands for a moment, snow collecting along its edges. Then artillery lands closer. No more hesitation. He slams it against his entrenching tool. It fractures sharply. He passes pieces to the men in his squad. One of them barely 20, lips blue from cold. Chew slow, Dugan says. The chocolate is nearly stone at this temperature. Teeth grind. One man winces as it sticks to a molar. It's awful, someone mutters. Dugan nods. Yeah. He forces it down. For several minutes, nothing changes. The cold still bites. The forest still thunders. Then slowly the tremor in his thighs eases. Warmth does not return, but control does. The fog at the edge of his vision recedes. His thoughts sharpen from drifting panic into clean lines. German infantry emerge between the trees. Dugan raises his rifle. This time it does not waver. He fires. All day they hold. Not heroically, not gloriously, just stubbornly. And when night falls and the forest grows silent except for distant engines, they are still there, still standing. February 1945, Hershey, Pennsylvania. Production managers gather on the factory floor beneath hanging banners celebrating efficiency awards. The Army-Navy E-flag flutters above them. They have produced hundreds of millions of emergency bars since 1942. But the formula is changing. Reports from the Pacific are clear. Men want something that feels like chocolate again, something that reminds them, however briefly, of normal life. The new ration, soon nicknamed the tropical bar, increases sugar slightly, improves texture, keeps heat resistance. It is not luxurious, but it is no longer designed to be unpleasant. For the first time since Pearl Harbor, the Army allows sweetness back into the calculation. Not because survival mattered less, but because morale mattered too. The D-Ration begins its quiet fade from dominance, still issued, still stored, but no longer the only answer. April 1945, Western Germany. The war in Europe is ending. Columns of surrendered soldiers move along shattered roads. Church bells ring cautiously in towns that had known only occupation and artillery for years. Dugan sits on the tailgate of a supply truck near a ruined rail yard. Smoke drifts lazily into a gray sky. He opens his pack one last time. There it is, one final D-Ration. He turns it over thoughtfully. It had crossed oceans with him. North Africa, Normandy, the Ardennes. It had waited in his pack, Disliked enough to be saved, durable enough to survive everything around it. He breaks it carefully, chews slowly. The taste is unchanged, dry, dense, unforgiving, but now it carries something else. Memory. He looks around at the men beside him, thinner than when they left home, older in the eyes, alive. He swallows the last piece. For years, men had joked that the Logan Bar was indestructible. They were wrong. It was not indestructible. It was dependable. And in war, dependability is a kind of mercy. The D-Ration never tasted like victory. It tasted like buying one more hour, one more mile, one more dawn. Bullets kill quickly. Hunger kills quietly. And sometimes the quiet enemies are the ones that decide who sees the end. The war would be remembered for its generals, its battles, its strategies. But scattered across deserts, jungles, beaches, and frozen forests was something far less glamorous. 4 dense ounces of chocolate that refused to melt, refused to spoil, and refused to be enjoyed too soon. In war, sweetness is optional. Survival is not.